Hello everyone, my name is Akankshu Nani, and welcome to my YouTube channel Neuro Chat with AG. On this channel, I plan to cover topics that are closest to my heart and support the neurodiverse community. Topics related to neurodiversity, autism spectrum disorder, and more. On the channel, I will interview thought leaders, esteemed researchers, scientists, professors, doctors, and psychologists, seeking their views and updates on their latest work, research, etc. I will also chat with parents of neurodiverse kids and adults and talk about experiences of neurodiverse individuals. Let me say this, my guest today is the reason behind my video series. I started volunteering at Pragnya in 2023, which transformed my curiosity into a passion for doing more for the neuro-minority community. Her commitment and attitude have been a great source of inspiration for me. Today, I am honored to be able to interview Kavita S, the co-founder of Pragnya. Under her leadership, Pragnya has developed a range of support systems to improve the lives of individuals with developmental differences. She supports individuals with developmental differences of all ages to get better access to resources, gain independence, and become more comfortable in social settings. Today, we have the opportunity to learn more about her journey, the innovative work being done at Pragnya, some insights into future programs, and the amount of change even a single person can bring. Ms. Kavita, a very warm welcome.
Thank you so much. And I'm really honored and humbled by the introduction. Truly, truly appreciated. Big words. I really wish that I am able to make that much of an impact, as big an impact on individuals who are watching your channel. And at the same time, I'm really grateful that you've chosen to look further into neurodiversity. And also, I think I just want to say that you said your passion for the neurodiversity community. I would say it's more than passion. What I've seen in you is the compassion that is developed for all your friends, whether they're neuro-majority or neuro-minority. So thank you very much. I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess we'll jump right into it. So, my first question, could you tell us about Pragnya's mission and how it aims to support individuals with developmental differences?
Pragnya, let me tell you that first, to understand what we do, we need to understand what pragnya means. Pragnya literally is an awakening. It's English can be very limiting. Pragnya is a Sanskrit term, and the essence of the meaning that uh, it kind of brings to the fore is mindfulness meets awakening, meets awareness, meets enlightenment. So it's a combination of all these things. That is what pragnya is about. And that ties directly into the vision of pragnya, where we believe that everybody deserves to live a life of dignity and respect, um, regardless of their difference, any kind of difference, yes, whether their ethnicity, their neurotype, any kind of difference, with the appropriate supports that they need. So I know it sounds very egalitarian and it might sound very lofty, but that's our vision, to have a world where everybody gets to live in a safe, secure, and a life of dignity and respect, with the supports that they need. And that being said, that's the vision that we work towards. And we do not believe that it's the responsibility of any one single individual or a family, a single family. We believe that it's the responsibility of every single one of us. You, me, your parents, my sister, my brother, all of us, every single person who is here, to be able to ensure that nobody is treated with disrespect or nobody is excluded. So, and to achieve that end, what we try to do is at Pragnya, we create that awakening. We've developed a program called the Neuro Ally Support Program, which you're trained in as well. And I'm so glad that it's you're standing testament to the work that we do, is to be able to create an awakening amongst children and adults alike about those who are different from them. Perhaps neurologically, perhaps ethnically, I mean, in any which way, right? And we want to be able to create that awakening where different is not less, and that it is every single one of our responsibility to be able to ensure that, that everybody is treated fairly, and that they're included. They have a seat at the table, regardless of their difference. And that the Neuro Ally Support Program is one of the things that we do. And the other thing that we do is, of course, we work with families and individuals to let them know that they're not alone. It can be very daunting and overwhelming for a family when they get a diagnosis, because, I mean, you're Asian, South Asian American, and I'm sure you've come across some racist tropes and jokes that are made about our curry and how our houses smell and, those kinds of things. I mean, I'm sure you've come across that. And then the Apu from The Simpsons kind of accent that people try to bring on. So that when there is any form of a difference, sometimes, and unfortunately so, there's a lot of hate and disparagement that comes along with it. So when a family is, especially think about this, has a child who has a neurodevelopmental difference, then it's even harder because for some reason, people think that there's something wrong with them, and that they gave birth to such a child. And it's no fault of the child, no fault of the individual. The universe at Pragnya, the awakening that we are trying to bring is that the universe doesn't give us anything that's broken, that everything that we're given needs to be cherished, and that at the end of the day, we're all one. And if we truly believe that we're all one, then nobody would do anything to disparage or to exclude a part of themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of have this stuff memorized almost at this point, but
Yeah.
yeah, that was awesome. And what
So that
inspired
was
you to?
my long answer to what is the mission of Pragnya. I had to explain to you what Pragnya meant and what it continues to mean. It's not an organization. It's not just a philosophy. I think Pragnya is more of a movement towards building a world that is beautiful and safe and can be enjoyed by all, for all.
Thank you. And what inspired you to focus on the work being done at Pragnya? So your personal story, if you don't mind sharing.
No, of course not. I don't mind sharing that. I think I have to go back to the person who inspired me to be of service to another. And that was, I think, the universe prepared me right from childhood to be working or to be in support of those with developmental differences. Come to think of it, only after I came to America and probably in the year 2012 or something is when I realized that, oh, okay, you know what? This is what a developmental difference is. This is what autism is. I had no idea what autism was, because I grew up in India, and the person that I referred to, who was my mother, was the person who actually introduced me to what it means to be inclusive. We had a next door neighbor who, for lack of a better term, was categorized as, in India they still call it mental retardation. I know that it's still called MR, as a disability, and this gentleman used to be confined to his home almost all of the time. I always saw him. He was probably in his 40s, probably older than my mom as well. And I always saw him in a white pajama, a white kurta, like, like literally like how inmates in prisons, the clothes that they wear. And, he had a different kind of a look, like because they're very intense. And I had seen the kids in our streets who were not very kind to him. I'd seen one time, I distinctly remember this, where they had tied like a little trail of tin cans, and they had tied it to his kurta, and were throwing stones and mocking at him. That was when I think my mom had actually, a born ally, I guess, had interfered and had actually told those kids off. In fact, to the extent that I think she was also going to smack one of the kids for doing something like that. And then um, she kind of took him to the lady who used to stay opposite our house. That's where they used to live. And then she left him inside the house. So after that, we didn't see him for a few days. And then my mom checked in on them just to make sure that he's okay, because it can be a pretty traumatic experience being bullied, right? And when you're on I think she knew, I'm not sure if she knew that he was developmentally different. We didn't know at that time, but now thinking back, I know that he was developmentally different. So that's how my initial introduction to somebody who's different came in. So she took us and went to their house and knocked on the door. And I still remember I was all of about 6 or 7 years old, and my brother was about 3. So I was about 6 years old. And we went in, and there was this auntie who, like an older lady, she opened the door, and she was like, yeah, and then my mom asked, how's that gentleman, like I brought him the other day. And then she said, oh, he's fine. And then um, she said, I'd like to see him. And they invited us in. And in India, they always have chai and cookies and coffee. So we went in and we were eating. And she said, where is he? We don't see him. She said, oh, no, no, he's in his room. And she said, yeah, I'd like to see him. Maybe the kids can play with him. And um, it was the most heartbreaking scene that we saw. He was in his room, and he had uh, like, how they have prisoners, they put a chain kind of thing against his ankle, and he was chained to the bed. It was a long chain, but he was chained to the bed. But he could walk, like, he was just pacing back and forth, and you could hear the chain dragging against. It was a metal chain, and it was dragging against the floor. And at that time, my mom actually, I still remember she was very young. She was just in her 20s, and then she had tears rolling down her eyes, and then she said, "Can you please free him at least when we are here?" And then they said, "No, no, no, he could possibly get aggressive and or violent or anything." She said, "No, just when we are here, it's okay, we're fine." And believe it or not, apparently he had been raging and ranting before that. He came out, he sat with us, he ate, he just kept looking at my mom, he kept touching her face. And then he came, he touched our face, and his mom was like, "Oh, no, no, he might, like, hurt your kids." And we were like little kids. And she said, "He might hurt." My mom said, "No, that's fine." And then he just like, he smiled, and then he started singing some Kannada song, and then, started skipping around the table. And my mom said, "Just go play with him, whatever you're doing." And that, I think, was my first lesson in acceptance. And uh, after that, every single day she would send us to go meet him. And she would say that, bring him this, bring him that. And, uh, we never saw any adverse behaviors or maladaptive behaviors. We saw him one time where he had bitten uh, somebody. I think one of the, they in India they call them domestic servants, like house help. But that was where we realized that for us, it didn't seem like, after that, he didn't seem like anybody different. So that was where the first realization happened. And then, of course, along the way, after I used to volunteer, my mom used to send me to these, in India, they're called halfway homes. So unfortunately, individuals who have developmental differences are generally sent away to institutional settings. And they're given up most of the time. People leave them at the doorstep of a church or a temple, and they don't really, or they give them up to these institutions because they can't take care of them. And I used to go, my mom used to make sure that I go and I volunteer at all these places as a child. And then, as a fate would have it, when I had my baby girl, she was diagnosed as being autistic at the age of 4. Because until then we hadn't realized, or I hadn't realized, that she belonged to the neuro-minority. And that's where, I came back home. It was a shock because I didn't know what autism was. And I came home and I was really completely shaken up. I hadn't said a word. My husband and I both hadn't spoken anything. And we came back, and it wasn't an official medical diagnosis. It was a school IEP that told us that possibly your daughter is autistic. And I came and I asked my mom, who was helping my daughter change at that time from her school uniform. And I said, Mom, so many things. And I said, is she autistic? They're saying she's autistic. And she just looked at me, and she looked at my daughter, and she said, they're saying you're autistic. Like, she was just like playing with my daughter. I said, Mom, do you think she has autism? They're saying she has autism. Do you think she has autism? And I was a little irritated when I asked her that question. And she just turned around, she looked me straight in the eye, and then she said, how does it make a difference? And that was my lesson. And that was my light bulb, my wake-up call, that it really does not make a difference. She said, do you love her any less? Has she changed from the delightful little girl that she is? It's no child comes with a parenting handbook. It's going to be a little difficult because you don't have a template to follow that most other neuro-majority parents would have. But you can communicate with her, right? Yeah. She communicates with you. You understand her needs. Yeah. Teach the world. She said, that's all you need. And that's where I would say the origin story of Pragnya happened. And after my mom passed a few years down the road, we said, okay, we need to do something about it. And we started Pragnya as an organization, because my Pragnya is not the Pragnya alone. There are many other people like her, which we realized really fast. So yeah, I'm sorry, that was a very long story that I gave you, but that's I think I had to give you some perspective as to how the life and universe prepares you for things that are to come your way.
And one more question I had, because these are, to me at least, awfully inspiring. Could you share a success story or a particularly impactful case where Pragnya made a significant difference in the life of someone?
For that, you have to talk to my self-advocate friends. I'm pretty sure you've met some of my self-advocate friends, like Jackie, like Nick, like David. You've met some of them right here at Pragnya. You've seen, each one of them different in their own delightful way. Some, I can tell you about one young man who was so anxious and so tired of being judged as being different, that he did not even want to enter or go to another class and would have major, severe outbursts and would not talk, would not utter a single word. And he was in 8th grade when he came to us. I think 7th grade, the end of his 7th grade, I think, was when he came to us. And his dad made multiple appointments with us, but never really showed up. You know what I mean? And 6 times. And the 6th time, I was like a little livid. And I said, and I told him, I said, I'm waiting at the office. If you can please let me know if you're not coming, because this is the 6th time. And he said, no, 100% we're going to be there. And then the 6th time again, and we've been waiting. It's been half an hour and they didn't show up. And then I called and I was like, I would have really appreciated, if you had, let us know. Blah, blah, blah. And then he said, no, Kavita ji, we're right outside the office, but he does not want to get down and come inside. So we said, oh, and then we went out and we met this young man. He had such severe anxiety that he wouldn't say a word. He didn't want to talk to us. He always would walk around with a hoodie on his head. And so much so that people actually thought that he might have become non-speaking, that he didn't have language. He would barely say a word, like barely. The word that he would say, which I still remember, is maybe. This is the word that he would say. And today, and then he actually didn't like people. Like he said that he didn't like being in social settings, even when he came in that day, because we were talking, and then we were talking about all kinds of things. And then he sat in a room, like you and I are facing each other. His back was facing us. Like he had his hoodie on and he turned his chair around, like, his back was facing us when we were talking. But by the time he left, his hoodie had slid off a little bit and his chair had turned to the side. So that's when we knew that we had made some progress, because there was no judgment. And that's one thing that I think it's kind of been ingrained in us, like I told you, from when we were kids. We don't really look at, oh, how severely autistic is this boy? That's not the way we look at it at Pragnya at all, because we accept every individual for who they are. And if I tell you who that young man is, and I don't know if I've told you the story before,
Yes, you have.
he MCs our events.
Yep, he did it last weekend.
Yes, and he acted as the protagonist in a movie that we produced in a short film. That to me is an incredible success story. I have many like this. There are many of our individuals. Somebody who was so anxious that she would never turn on a camera on Zoom now goes on and when our shows go on, she's Chinese, but she will want to go on an Indian karaoke show and go talk about neurodiversity and talk about acceptance and talk about Indian music. So it's just beautiful to just see how people come into their own when you just truly accept them for who they are. That's all we're looking for in life, validation, right, of who we are and not who we ought to be.
How does Pragnya stay updated with the latest research, innovations, and legislation in the field?
Okay, so Pragnya stays away from any kind of medical treatment. We're not a hospital. We're not a therapy program. We're not any one of those things. What Pragnya is, as I said, we're all about we're a family where we believe that together is always better and you're accepted here no matter what. So in terms of latest research, obviously we go to conferences and, we do, keep up to date with what can add to the quality of life of our individuals with developmental differences. How can we make it a safer world? Who are the other people and who are the thought leaders in the space? Be it through the self-determination program, be it through the programming of supported decision-making, be it through how do you implement or bring about change so that individuals with developmental disabilities, as we need to call it for the political system, need to be able to, how can they retain their rights and not lose their rights through guardianship or conservatorship, right? And how do they still maintain agency over their lives? Those kinds of things. There's a lot of advocacy work that's going on. There's a lot of policy work that's going on. And what we do at Pragnya is more on the grassroots level, but as as the years have progressed, and we're very young, even now, we're only about 6.5 years old. I think the work that we're doing is reaching people at the state level. So I just got appointed to the Master Plan Committee for Developmental Services, which means mapping out the next 10 years as to what needs to happen to improve the quality of life of individuals with developmental disabilities. I chair one of the committees of this particular committee. I chair one of the work groups, and my work is on a priority called lifelong services, seamless services. So how can we improve systems? How can we improve support programs? How can we improve overall service delivery so that our individuals with developmental differences can lead a quality of life that is reminiscent of dignity and respect? So that ties directly into what we do at Pragnya. So I think that's one of the ways that we have been able to stay abreast. And of course, there's so many wonderful organizations that are doing the work. So, and obviously we connect with thought leaders and peer mentors in the space. So,
How does Pragnya involve and support the families and communities of neuro-minority individuals?
in the first place, Pragnya is a 501c3 community-based organization. We're a nonprofit organization. All our services are pretty much funded through public dollars or through outreach programs and grants, right? So the way we support individuals is anybody who comes to us looking for any kind of service, whether we know how to navigate that service or not. And you'll be surprised how many highly skilled, highly qualified, highly educated individuals still don't know how the system works and how there are supports. And we're blessed to be in the state of California. And I truly, truly, truly am grateful that we are in the United States of America, because this is one country where we take care of our developmentally different friends as well. So there are wonderful federal programs. And then there is also in California, we're blessed to have something called the Lanterman Act, which basically, makes a specific department called the Department of Developmental Services, which is dedicated for services to these individuals, to make sure that individuals who have developmental differences are cared for from birth through end of life, through different, I mean, I don't want to go into all those details as to how it happens, but what Pragnya does is we support families, in terms of navigating the system of supports, whether it is going through the county for county supports, going through the school system, how do you get your IEPs, which is the individualized education plans, or going to the regional center system, which is through the Department of Developmental Services. What are the different kinds of services the family or the child can avail of to be able to bridge that achievement gap, so to speak, or at least obtain a semblance of quality of life that is typically what their neurotypically developing peer would experience. And so we support families like that. We also train families and empower families in the different systems and supports. We create community navigators, people who go out, who can go out into their respective communities, whether they're Spanish speaking. We do a lot of training programs. We have people who from Bangladesh, from Nepal, from Sri Lanka, from um, Eritrea, from Ethiopia, who are all part of our training programs, where, in these communities, the uh, the tenet or the concept of disability is tied to a lot of shame and guilt. And for them to reach out, for them to break through that barrier of being able to come out and say, hey, I need help or I need support. It's hard, right, to ask for help. It means humbling yourself to an extent. And there's a lot of cultural factors that are tied in, aside from the linguistic factors, where there's so much nuance to every single thing that it's hard for people to find a safe space or a safe. So what could possibly be lost in translation, Pragnya tries to bridge that gap. I mean, there are several organizations that are doing the work. We're just one of the organizations. What we do is we walk the family. In our case, we actually work individually one-on-one with the families, and we try to support them. Like, for example, during the pandemic, many of our Indian families were lost. They really didn't know how they're going to manage. And a lot of families had children where the pandemic wreaked havoc on the mental health of a lot of our kids. So Pragnya reached out, found out, learned about what are the services, brought the regional center, brought people who would talk about what can be made possible to better support our individuals. How do you give a respite to the parents? How do you get better behavioral supports for our individuals? How do we, what are some what kinds of programming can we put together that would add value to them, during that time? So we provide trainings, we do informational workshops, we support these families, and we have a very interesting series that we do called Coffee, Chai, and I. So it's like anything desi, anything Indian is chai and samosas, right? We love that. Or coffee and croissants or coffee and bagels. So we do a sort of like a parent support group where once a month we all meet over bagels and coffee or over chai and samosas. And we basically talk about, sometimes it's just a vent session, but what's not going okay. And sometimes, and typically we have like a topic of discussion, like for instance, something with regard to an IEP. This is what we're facing. We will bring an expert speaker in and we talk about how the system can be improved. Because we're not problems focused, we're more solutions focused. So we try to see how, if there is something that's happening, what kind of action points do we take back? Because we have very limited time on this earth. And if there is something that's really plaguing somebody, then how do we make it better? That's what we try to do. So those are the different ways. And of course, we also create beautiful events. I'm sure you've come to some of them. We try to do community integration events, like we have a Dandiya, which is the first and only and longest running all-inclusive Dandiya, which we started since 2018, in the entire world, where it's neuro majority and neuro-minority, and everybody comes together, and it's like, for those of you who don't know what Dandiya is, we're watching Akanksha's Neuro Chat channel. Let me tell you, it's a beautiful, colorful dance with a lot of wonderful Bollywood beats mixed in with some traditional folk beats. So it's a celebration that happens around October. And we do a Valentine event. We do a Neurodiversity Appreciation event. We do, and then of course we have a whole bunch of events that we do with our first responders as well. So the goal is to normalize differences, to be able to say that different is delightful and that together we're all better. So that's what we try to do.
What role do you see community support playing in the lives of individuals, and how does Pragnya facilitate this?
Let me ask you, have you heard of the term "no man is an island"? Have you heard of that adage? Yeah. So I think our identity, like if is developed from how we are perceived by people around us. So because I perceive you as as an intelligent young man, Akangsh Gurnani, or your friends or your parents or everybody, they validate your sense of identity, correct?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess.
Okay. I know you probably wanted me to add maybe handsome or something. But but uh it's unfortunate that individuals who are developmentally different, because they communicate in a way that most of us don't understand, and because we live in such an ableist world. The reason I say that ableist is because we've built this world according to our standards, right? The neuro-majority, because, oh, we're the majority. This is the way it's supposed to be. You are only, these people will be recognized for marriages. Only this is the way that a relationship is supposed to work. This is the way laws are supposed to be. This is the way communication is supposed to be. You have all these, there's a lot of ableist um, rhetoric, and there's a lot of ableist systems that we've put into place. And obviously, if you've built something that's so rigid, people who are different will not fit into that mold. And just because they don't fit into that mold doesn't make them less, or doesn't make them deserving of being excluded or, forgotten. And that is what is happening in the world today. Even if there is so much awareness about neurodiversity. So what the community needs to do is, or which we hope, and we hope that we're building this community of allies, is to be able to reach out. Always, it has been the onus of the family to try to fix the individual to fit into this ableist society that we want to do, like, behavior therapy, speech therapy, occupational therapy, this therapy, that therapy. When does that child get to be a child? Imagine, when do they play therapy? Oh my God, it's really like, the more I think about it, it just boggles my mind that how we kind of beat the personality out of that kid. You know what I mean? Like the way we're trying to, chip away, say, this is not okay. You got to do this, you got to do that. And when does that stop? And no wonder, it's little wonder that they start to act out as they grow up, and they start to, little wonder that they have such low self-esteem that it develops into mental health issues and conditions. And it may not just be the parents. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying the parents do it. It's society, it's our conditioning, it's our community. But if the community said, hey, I accept you for who you are. And yeah, you probably don't speak the way I do. That doesn't mean, or you probably don't have language to be able to express the way I do. That doesn't mean that I don't include you in my conversations, because you are communicating in your own way. So, and then when you appreciate somebody for who they are, and not the mold that they need to fit into, then you are giving them that sense of validation. And that is when society or a community will truly thrive. Otherwise, there'll always be discontent. And I think that is the role that Pragnya plays. We are creating that Pragnya, the awakening in every individual, to understand that truly at the end of the day, we're all pure, compassionate beings, and that compassion, we need to tap into that to flow out into the world to be able to include everybody.
What are some of the biggest challenges neuro-minority individuals face today, and how is Pragnya working to address these challenges?
Like I said, judgment, exclusion, um, um, and I think, for lack of a better term, being set up for failure. Because I can speak from a local perspective. Although there is a special education system, we have something called the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. How unfortunate it is, isn't it, that we had to have law passed to ensure that children with disabilities can get an education? You know, it's a no-brainer for everybody else. Why should it be any different for those who are developmentally different or those who are born different? And it's really a shame on us as a society that a law had to be passed. People had to chain themselves to Congress, the gates of Congress, to be able to pass this law. You know, and I'm eternally grateful to those wonderful self-advocates and parent advocates who actually fought for this to be passed. But up until less than 30, 40 years ago, people were not able to, 30 years ago, actually, in fact, people were not able to get an education. They were, if you had a disability, you were relegated to an institution. So, but even with the IDEA being passed, they're still segregated into special classrooms. I don't know if you go, I think you go to a public school and you might have seen that there is a special education classroom. Why? How hard is it to have them amongst all of you if all of you can be trained to be allies? How hard, don't you think there's more collaboration? And research has proved time and again that individuals who grow up in an inclusive society, not just the neuro-minority, the neuro-majority as well, tend to do better because you are building compassionate leaders. Empathy actually helps you grow your social person or your persona. And overall, you're more successful because you've got empathy, compassion, you're mindful, you're inclusive, all of that. And research has proven time and again that, that people are more, they do well in schools, they do well, neuro-majority kids I'm talking about, when you are in service of another. So I think by segregating people into special classrooms, you're teaching children right from preschool that those are the weird kids, or I don't belong with the rest of them. You know what I mean? You're preparing, and then what happens is it just gets further and further. The gap keeps growing, and at the end of the day, they're graduating not life ready, not job ready, and with a really poor sense of self and dependent on the system. That's where we're setting them up for failure. And that's where Pragnya is trying to make a difference, in the sense that we are trying to, one ally at a time, raise the awareness that maybe they don't have the language to fight in our ableist society, but as allies, each one of us can make a difference. We hold each other's hand and pull each other up and raise our voices together. And if my Pragnya is unable to find the words to say, hey, hear me out, there will be an Akanksha who'll stand beside her and say, she deserves a place at the table. So listen to us. That's the difference that I hope Pragnya is going to make.
Can you discuss any societal or systemic barriers that need to be overcome to better support individuals with developmental differences?
One of my early introductions to the disability community here was this lovely lady that I happened to meet at a library. She's quadriplegic. She was in a wheelchair, and when I asked her the exact same question: what do you think is the biggest barrier you face? And she said, attitudinal barriers. And unfortunately, that's true even today. Attitudinal barriers in the minds of people even as close as family members, that, I'll say this in Hindi, usse nahi hoga, or that's not possible. I don't think she can do it. Do you really think she'll understand? Or do you think he will get it? No, 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 no. That's the first barrier that we need to cross. And of course, attitudinal barriers across the system. Oh, do you really think, somebody in a wheelchair can do this? Or do you really think the person can be regulated enough to do this job? So if we start with that barrier, then they're never going to be successful. But if we said, okay, clean slate, let's accept them for who they are and see how we can support them, and then go from there. I'm going to turn around and ask you a question. I know that you probably haven't shared, I don't know if you've shared it on any of your previous episodes, but you have had an opportunity to work with a range of different individuals here, right? And I know, and I'd like to share that you sometimes have worked with individuals who possibly might seem daunting and challenging to other individuals. How were you able to successfully connect with them?
I think, yeah, this is one that I have a lot of examples for, but I'll give the two biggest ones. So it was my first time working with this individual, and I had heard about him, and like, his, I guess, how he was more violent than some other individuals, and not violent in terms of that he was more prone to being violent, just that because of his size, he was above 6 foot. So when he was violent, it was a lot more dangerous and to the people around him. And I was worried, I guess, hearing that, he could have been a little dangerous. At first, there was a little doubt in my mind, right? Like, how do I handle this situation? If he does start behaving, what am I supposed to do? Because physically, I can't block him if he is having a behavior. So I was very worried, but surprisingly enough, like, nothing of the like happened. Like, he talked with me very well. When he started feeling a little bit uncomfortable, he communicated with me like very clearly that I don't want to talk about this right now. I want to go over there. I don't like being around this many people. So I think one thing is not having a prejudice going in, that this person is like this, because even I have days where I'm way worse than I am on other days. Like, to people around me, if everybody started judging me based on my bad days, like in we have a tendency to, like, people who are, I guess what you define as normal, you think of their good days as their normal and say, oh, they're having a bad day. But with people with developmental differences, a lot of times it's you think of their bad days as the normal and kind of think of their good days as an exception, which I think is a little weird. But yeah.
You said something which kind of hit the nail on the head. You said without prejudging, without any prejudice. That is key, right? I mean, you can tell when somebody is judging you very easily, right? And at least from my experience with my neuro-minority friends, children, and all the individuals that I support, they're very intuitive. They pick up really fast, because imagine if they've been exposed to that level of judgment right from birth, all their life, that like they need fixing. So they pick up on that from society. And I think that is a big barrier that they face. And that is something that our society needs to learn. And I think at Pragnya, the training that we offer to be a better human being, to be that pure, compassionate human being, and to lead a developmentally oriented life, to be mindful of others, to be empathetic towards those around us, and to understand that we all belong together, that we're all part of one, that I can never truly be happy if you're hurting or somebody else is hurting. I truly cannot be happy. Think about it, right? Um, whether it is in terms of the universe, whether it's in terms of a different segment of society or somebody who identifies differently, I really cannot, who am I to judge, right? When we judge, even when we say good or bad, I think we are in a position where kind of already excluding people. So I think that pragnya that we're trying to create amongst human beings, like yourself, and I think that's what is really going to make an impact on the lives of all of our developmentally different friends. And I know that you talked about this one individual that possibly the reason you didn't see any dysregulation happen is because the person understood that you treated that person with respect and gave them the due credit that they deserved, that they felt comfortable enough to share with you that they don't want to continue a conversation, or they don't want to be around you, or for that moment when they wanted to go regulate themselves. So I think if we can afford everybody that amount of respect, I think our work is done.
Could you talk about any collaborations or partnerships Pragnya has formed with other organizations?
Yeah, like I mentioned to you, we work with the Department of Developmental Services, right? We're very fortunate that we've had the opportunity to work with them. We work with the State Council on Developmental Disabilities, which is, an organization that exists to make sure that they're bringing forth all the concerns that the self-advocate, when I say self-advocate, people with the developmental difference themselves, that they're bringing up, and parent advocates that bring up these issues and how to bring about systemic change. We work with them. We've also worked with the regional centers. These are private nonprofit entities that are put together, that actually are in place to ensure that our individuals are supported, right? Like the San Andreas Regional Center, the Regional Center of the East Bay, Golden Gate Regional Center. There's 21 centers across the state of California. So we work with almost every regional center, not only in Northern California. We're blessed, that we've been able to touch quite a few lives, I think over 1,200 families and individuals across the state of California, in the work that we are doing. And of course, there's many other community-based organizations that we partner with, we work with. The biggest community organizations that have come forward, when I say community, first responders, the San Jose Police Department, the Milpitas Police Department, the Santa Clara Police Department, Fire Department, the Department of Public Safety at Sunnyvale, amazing allies that we have there. We call them first responders for neurodiversity support. Big shout outs to all these wonderful Campbell Police Department, and Mountain View Police Department. So we're growing. We're trying to get into to raise enough awareness and appreciation to actually come out and be with our individuals. Santa Clara Police Department, oh my God, how can I forget? Because they invited us into their offices. They showed us how they work. They showed our individuals. And how wonderful is it when you have the people who keep all of us safe actually take the time out to make sure that they understand our individuals and our neuro-minority community. It's a beautiful feeling. So, yeah. And then we work with several temples and community organizations like gurdwaras, and to raise awareness, and to also and high-tech organizations, like we go out and do presentations about the work that we do at Pragnya. So yeah, the list is endless, and I hope it is endless, because I hope that we can keep reaching out to as many people as possible. Who knows? Maybe.
What future projects or initiatives is Pragnya planning to further support neuro-minority individuals?
Well, one active project that we are working on is to build connectors, or to empower parents and individuals who have that developmental difference themselves from the neuro-minority community to be able to learn more about the system, learn about how to be able to support each other and to build like a community, right? Like to be able to support each other. We also are working on something called supported decision making. So a lot of our individuals who have developmental differences don't necessarily always understand the trappings of our society, and don't, you could leave $1 million to, for example, my daughter, but she wouldn't know. She'd be happy with her In-N-Out grilled cheese sandwich, or, her tandoori naan and paneer butter masala. It doesn't matter to her if you left her $1 million or not. What happens to her after we pass? Or when they become adults, should they be conserved or not? And this is a burning question that happens. So what Pragnya is working on is on building allies who will actually become circles of support for our individuals, where they would work together in the sense that would keep in touch with our individuals to make sure that their life is, that nobody's taking advantage of them, or that their life is on track, you know what I mean, like as planned. So if they have caregivers, there are systemic supports that are there in place, but to make sure that we're able to educate family members and friends and coworkers and society to learn how to be supporters. Because if it's taking 1-2 hours of your week, or maybe 1 hour a month for you to be able to look into and just ensure that that person is safe and nobody's taking advantage of them, then what could be better, right? So it's called supported decision making. So it's a law called AB 1663 that passed, which said that individuals who have developmental differences, and also seniors with dementia, onset of Alzheimer's dementia, that supported decision making would be a more preferred alternative as opposed to guardianship, where they lose all of their rights technically. So in educating and empowering the community, that's one of the projects. And then, of course, we have a grand project that we have in mind, which we really, really, really hope that we can, pull off. And this is an integrated housing project. So where there would be our individuals would get to live in the community, like not some far off place, like, out in the boonies, but in the middle of society, and their caregivers, and also neuromajority individuals like yourself, all of us would get to live in the same community together. So that's another big project that we're working on. So, it's the work is endless, but we're relentless. So
How do you see the understanding of individuals with developmental differences evolving in the next decade? And what role do you envision Pragnya playing in that future?
I think one of the biggest things is to create appreciation for neurodiversity. Everybody knows, oh, Autism Awareness Day, everybody will wear blue, but a lot of people don't even understand what it means to be appreciative of individuals who are neurodivergent or in the neuro-minority. You might wonder why I keep using the term neuro-minority over and over again, because we believe that we live in a neurodiverse world. Some are in the majority, some are in the minority. So to understand that, the individuals who are in the neuro-minority are disparaged against even today, and without intentionally or unintentionally, or even with our own attitudinal barriers, and to overcome those barriers and give them an opportunity to thrive and to give back. I think that's where our world needs to head towards. And in fact, you talked about me being on the master plan committee for the state for developmental services. One of the things that I did say, and people thought, oh, that seems very lofty, or it sounds very like. I am from a PR background, and I do believe that the more we talk about it, the more we get it out to people, the more people will understand about the genuine issues and the genuine problems and the genuine, um, disparities that exist between those who are different in our society and how ableist we are as a community. And only when we understand that will we start to make change. Do you know what I mean? Will we start to get involved? Unfortunately, they don't teach disability studies in school. They don't teach any of that. So one of my pet peeves has been that nobody is talking about it at the kindergarten, first grade level. And I am pushing for awareness to be created either through introduction of curriculum in schools or through, if they'll not do inclusive classrooms, at least introduce them to, the issues that surround disability and how they can make a difference, even in terms of careers, because I'm sure that you possibly had no idea about the careers in the disability industry. Did you know that there's, if you want to be an attorney or you want to go into law, there's a special education law that you can go into? Did you know that there's disability rights that you can, become an attorney for? You could be a special education teacher, you could be a behavioral psychologist. How many people know about all these careers? And I think that's one thing that we need to create awareness about. About neurodiversity itself, and appreciation for it, and provide people with a roadmap as to how to better support our neurodivergent community.
Has been the most rewarding aspect of your work?
Allies like you. And I'm not kidding. That's all I can say. To have, to know that, there are individuals that are going to be out in the world, who are going to be aware, appreciative, and compassionate enough to support all of our neuro-minority community. I think that is the biggest impact. And when I say support, I don't mean like literally, taking care of them and being in their homes and things like that. I mean, being there for them when it's called for, including neuro-minority individuals in your workforce when you go out there, keeping neuro-minority individuals at the forefront when you're making laws, making sure that neuro-minority individuals are not mistreated or disparaged against, and standing up for them and making sure that it's a safe world for all. I think that only our allies can do. And I think that is the biggest impact that I think we've had. And if there is one Akanksh who, my daughter or any of these kids can look forward to seeing every week, then I think we have achieved what we have achieved. And obviously, hopefully vice versa as well. And I know that if that same one Akanksh keeps wanting to come back after initially signing up for leave for a week of volunteering and then wanting to come back week after week and wanting to start a YouTube channel, what can be a bigger impact than that? Right? So I think we're very blessed because I will tell you, this year we had we had one of our first batch of allies graduate from university. One is a special education teacher, is going into special education. Another one is going into behavioral psychology. And another one is going into artificial intelligence and robotics, and is pursuing a master's to see how you can improve quality of life for individuals who have developmental differences. We have, I mean, it's beautiful to see how we've been able to expand the vista of opportunities that are out there for people. We have two of them. One is a major in mathematics and also in music therapy. So, and music therapy for the neurodevelopmentally different community. So, what can be better than that, right? It's just a beautiful it's just a beautiful feeling to know that these are people who are out there, and that our children will be growing up in that world. Just gives us a little bit of hope that they're going to be okay.
And what advice would you give to parents and caregivers of children on the spectrum?
Just let them be. They're beautiful as they are, and accept, appreciate, and you'll teach the world how to acculturate to neurodiversity.
Thank you. Ms. Kavita, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation, and congratulations on all the amazing success. And I'm also hoping for even more in the future.